Welcome back. All right, the next thing on the agenda is what we call consent agenda, which is due to our proposal here. And in this agenda, what I asked the manager to do is to put the things together, make a motion, second the motion, and they all pass unanimously. And to save everybody a lot of time, just do it one time. So at this point, we need to ask if there's anything in this proposed consent agenda that needs to be taken out. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm greatly disappointed that we're moving to this consent agenda format, especially when it seems like there's a lot of missing information. So if I'm going to read the agenda ahead of time, and we're going to give gift cards to the volunteer fire company, which is a great thing to do, how much are we going to be giving? So that type of information should be posted on the consent agenda so that the public can read it and, you know, be better informed. It's yet again another problem of communication. You know, we're trying to communicate and be transparent for the residents so they can be informed, but when we move to this type of thing, we're not putting people first here in Hampton Township.
Excuse me, that's not exactly correct. This is exactly the same motion that would have been there anyhow. Now, if you have a question about it, how much is the gift card, that's fine. And please answer the question.
But I'm just saying that if we're going to vote
$50.
for them, just one single gift card.
Per person.
Okay, so,
We have,
Requirements for active duty volunteers, so if an individual doesn't do a certain amount of responses to fire calls, trainings, or participation in their planning meetings as a volunteer, if they're not classified as an active duty member, they wouldn't receive it.
yeah, the point, all these things, and I understand what you're saying, Kathleen, and that's probably a fair statement, because if you just read that motion, you would have no idea that we're giving $50 to a volunteer fireman for a year's service, and that they have to qualify to get it. And I think that's a very fair statement. So thank you.
it's not just about the qualification, it's just that it's the budgetary information that's not being put into the public, you know, purview. So,
I understand what you're saying.
if we're going to be, are we giving 10 gift cards out? Are we giving 50 gift cards out?
We don't know. We don't know that, because the fire company gives us a list of, they keep track. And we have an agreement with the fire company about how you qualify to be, what's the word?
Right, you're running 10% of the
Active duty.
To be active duty. And so a fireman that does the volunteer work that we're asking a volunteer to do, at the end of the year, it's a stipend, but, you know, it means something that the township is saying thank you to these guys that go out there and risk life.
And I appreciate that, and I'm all for that.
I'm sure you are.
But I'm just, my concern is that we're committing money, we don't even know the amount of money that we're committing, okay? So, and they're gonna, at some point, give you a number of people. So why don't you give them the deadline before you vote on it to say how many people qualify, and then you know ahead of time before you vote on it.
Ma'am, you're invoking your rights as noted on the agenda, which says if discussion is desired on any particular items, which this one seems to be of interest to you, any member of the board or public may request that the item be removed from the consent agenda so that further discussion and questions can be held. But the assumption that anybody in this audience, no offense intended, would be concerned about approving a release of construction escrow to a developer who's completed a project as listed in item G is somewhat innocuous. So that's the intent of the consent agenda. If you would like the board to remove the fire company item for further discussion outside of the consent agenda, they'll honor that request.
Okay, and then, well, I mean, any of these items that require the committal of funds that aren't listed in these items, I would like them removed, okay? Because I don't see how we can be fully informed how you're spending the tax money that we're paying. So, you know, I find that you know, if we're going to commit funds, it should be stated there before you vote, so we know what's being committed.
I think the only item on the agenda that does not commit funds specifically would be the one that you're raising. So you want that to come out of the consent agenda?
Okay, and then the Association of Township Commissioners membership, we don't pay a dues for that?
I don't know if they do or don't.
There is a dues for that, and then I would suggest that item M also be considered relative to the suburban testing labs. If you're concerned about township commitment of funds, those are the three that I see on the agenda that would be deserving of your opportunity or anyone else in this audience to ask these questions.
Okay.
So if that's your request, I would
Yes.
recommend that the commissioners consider adoption of the consent agenda items minus item D, E, and M as noted on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Ready to move in second, is there anything on the question? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now we'll take item D, which is the PA State Association of Township Commissioners 2020 membership. I'll accept the motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve the $3,634.55 dues stated here for the State Association of Township Commissioners.
Second.
Everybody moved in second, is there anything on the question? Audience? All in favor,
So
please signify.
is that for individual commissioners, because, is it for?
That's for the township to participate as a participating municipality in the State Association of Township Commissioners.
As an entire board.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
actually, it's the township that's the member, not the board.
True.
So the township is a member, and it really has been a very helpful organization, in case you're interested, to the township, specifically the Hampton Township, and sometime I can give you some examples, but not right now. In any event, it has been a useful organization.
And
so-
lobbying in the legislature to represent
And,
municipalities.
and I can tell you that I'm aware that hundreds of thousands of dollars come to the Hampton Township citizens because of action by the PSATC, specifically on behalf of the Hampton Fire Department. I know also that, just so that people know, Mr. Silcox is about to become president of the PSATC. And he'll be the third, there's about 80 presidents in the history, about 80, something like that. There's about 80 presidents in the history of the PSATC. He'll be the third one from Hampton Township, which is amazing when you think about it. That means the rest of the township's the first class of 77, and we have 3 of them. So anyhow, and congratulations on that's going to happen.
Premature.
But anyhow, okay, so all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now we'll go to item E.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of gift cards in the amount of $50 for the Hampton Township Volunteer Fire Company active duty members, and I'll make a qualification that we not exceed $5,000.
And in checking with Kathy, as the commissioners know, you have about 50 members in the fire company, and only about 30 of them meet the active duty qualifications, so we're more in line with $1,500 to $2,000. And as the commissioners know, if we had a paid fire company, you'd be into multi-millions of
Oh,
dollars.
millions and millions of
I
dollars.
would gladly
Millions.
second that motion for the
Second.
volunteers who put in countless hours and risk their personal safety, leave their families at all hours of the day and night, and serve in all types of weather throughout the year. So I would gladly second a $50 nominal gift card to the firefighters.
I have a regular motion that's been seconded. Anything on the question? Board, audience? The only other thing, there was something that happened on Trindle and Simpson, where lightning struck one of those fuel tanks up there, and it was on fire. I mean, can you imagine a tank full of oil burning? And our firemen went out there and fought that fire. If that thing had melted, there would have been burning oil all over the place. And honest to goodness, you know, the things that they do, we don't know what our volunteers train for, the amount of time they put in. John and Nate are exactly right. They're heroes. Any way you cut it, they're heroes. And what we've tried to do, we do a few things. What we've tried to do is to encourage our volunteers and say thank you in a meaningful way. And around the holidays, we think that this is an appropriate thing to do. So anyway, anything else on the question? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And we have one more.
Mr. Chairman, Jeremy will address item N.
Yes, sir. I ask for approval of a contract with Suburban Testing Labs to provide wastewater lab testing services for 2020. This is required by our DEP NPDES permit. I would like to note that the cost of that is probably reduced by a third due to the diligence of your wastewater superintendent, Jeff Clare, who worked with DEP to reduce the required number of testing. We now test 2 to 3 times a week, where we previously were doing 7 times a week. So again, he's reduced that cost by a third or more, so I'd ask for authorization to execute that agreement. This is an estimated cost because the number of tests that are required depends on the operations, how much flow we get, and other varying factors of the wastewater operation. But the estimated cost would be $29,616. That's for testing of the entire year of wastewater operations.
And those are state mandated tests.
They are absolutely state mandated tests.
I make a motion to approve it.
Regularly moved and seconded. Is there anything on the question? Board? Audience? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. In the future, I think Kathleen's point is well taken. We can put the amount in the motion, and then those things can pass through. The whole idea of this is not to delay for things that they're typically non-debatable. And these 3 items, frankly, were non-debatable, but to give you full information, I think there's nothing wrong with adding the price right into the motion. Thank you very much. Okay, zoning hearing board, it says here December 18, 2019, application deadline November 22nd, 2019. Does that mean that they could still apply for something?
There is a chance that an application could be received tomorrow, yes, sir. But
As
we
of
have
now, there is
nothing at
none?
this point. Correct, as of close of business.
All right, so as of right now, we have nothing. Thank you very much. The next thing on the agenda is our chief of police, Chief Junkin.
Here I am. Good evening, everybody. For Commissioners, you have my report. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Just a couple highlights. For the month of October, the police department responded to 1,703 calls for service. For the year, we're at 16,515. That's 4,000 over where we were last year at this point. So that's representing a 31% increase over last year. Our DUI arrests are up 13%, traffic citations 60, warnings 83. So we aren't heavy-handed. We're giving breaks out there, when needed. But our injuries are down 12%. Reportable crashes are down 9%. And our overall crashes are only up 1%. So when you look at our call volume, everybody knows how many cars are traveling up or down the roads. I think that's pretty good stats. And the men and women of the police department are trying very hard to keep everybody safe out there. So that's that. Your radar signs were delivered. They came today, with a big bow on them from Arizona. So we're going to be working with Public Works to identify some sites along the Worksville Road, and then we plan on having those erected, and we will then put them up for periods of time, and along with that will be coordinated enforcement. That's one of the PennDOT regulations or suggestions is when you employ those signs, that you also have enforcement with it, so people aren't just ignoring the signs and trying to get the number outside.
Well, I'd like to thank you for undertaking that project. For residents that don't know, we did studies on the Wartsville Road corridor, and one of the ideas that we came up with was making it perfectly clear to people that traverse through Hampton to East Pennsboro, to and from East Pennsboro and Silver Spring, that when you enter Hampton Township on Wartsville Road, you're immediately struck with a sign that utilizes radar to tell you your speed and to basically notify you that, maybe warn you that when you get pulled over, there will be no excuse. So kudos to the police department for undertaking that, and for the residents in that corridor, we heard you, and slow down because there won't be excuses that you live there and your kids are late for school. Right?
Amen.
Don't speed in Hampton Township, please.
Don't speed in Hampton Township. Here, I just said, our traffic citations are up 60%, so on. Finally, Commissioners, last week was our graduation for the Citizens Police Academy. It was a 9-week program. We had 21 people finish the program, and it was very successful. A lot of great comments and a great opportunity for us to kind of get our viewpoint out, but also to hear from our residents, things that they would expect of us, and kind of a ability for us to dispel some myths, get them to know the different police officers who come in and present on a variety of topics. And we also did field trips to the prison, 911 center, and the courthouse. So all in all, great thing, and we will be doing it again next year.
Chief, one other matter to note is the department has now an additional drug recognition expert,
Correct.
Officer Siegfried.
That's correct. Officer Siegfried passed his very rigorous testing to become our second DRE, which means when we stop somebody for impairment, but it's not obvious alcohol impairment, he can test them and get it down to the classification of drug that the person is on, and then actually testify in court, and that is an evidentiary finding. So it's gonna help us be more effective in our impaired driving. We're already great on the alcohol side, and we're getting better on everything else, so
Thank you.
that's it.
Thanks, Chief.
Drive carefully over Thanksgiving, please.
The next portion of the agenda is from our Director of Public Works, Jeremy.
Thanks, sir. In your packets, a letter from James Brandon. He's a developer of Granny Farms. He's again requesting that we accept dedication of his roads. As we discussed previously, the build out of that project is not complete, so staff is not supportive of the concept of accepting those streets at this point. But rather, he's indicated that he'll be at 76% as a closing business of, or as he closes on his final house there. My recommendation, or I ask for authorization from the board to deny his request and indicate that he can submit again in the spring if the buildings have been completed.
So we're denying his request.
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Second.
I have a regular motion that's been seconded. Is there anything on the question? Audience?
I have a question. What percentage are you looking for?
75%.
Okay.
Yeah, but built 75%, not sold. I mean, just because it's sold doesn't mean that the.
So it has to exist.
It has to exist, that's correct.
Yeah, so certificate of occupancy.
I don't need, well, yes, yes.
Okay. Anything else on the question? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Just for your information, DEP has approved this draft. The MS4 permit is submitted. That included the pollutant reduction plan, which was reviewed in the public and advertised multiple times, and will be finalized here within the next couple of weeks. Just if there's any additional questions, as you may recall, we were able to prevent or complete the required reductions without the purchase or of private lands or doing any work on private lands at this point. Cannot make the promise that that'll happen moving forward. Going off the agenda real quick, along with the MS4 permit, we are in the process of submitting the Growing Greener Plus application. Commissioner Thomas, I'm sure you'll be happy to hear that. I had a pre-application meeting with DEP this morning. Looks favorable. I will meet with the Conservation District as well to get support. And we've got a letter of support from the Secretary of PennDOT directed to the Secretary of DEP. We'll be looking for other letters of support as well as the completion of the application.
And I think this is dealt with.
That's correct.
I think this will make Kathleen very happy. What we're trying to do is to tackle some of the stormwater problems that exist and have existed in Delbrook ever since they built it. And Jeremy Miller, along with DEP, have come up with a technique that we think will, we have no place to take the water. If you put a pipe in the street and try to run it out of there, you gotta run it to somewhere. So trying to drain the south part of the township has always been a very difficult situation, because if the water flows gravity to the Yellow Bridge. To get there, it goes down Trindle, goes back behind McDonald's, and then it forms a lake in there, where it goes under the railroad tracks, and then it goes into Lower Allen Township. Years ago, we wanted to put more pipes in, and then open up that pipe that goes under the railroad tracks and make it bigger. And I remember Mel Finkelstein saying it looked like Niagara Falls coming through there if we ever do that. And Lower Allen wouldn't give permission. So this technique that they're going to use, and DEP has been monitoring it, we did a sample in our park,
I call it a pilot.
right? A pilot program in our park, and it's working. We'll take the water into a couple wells, we think,
A well,
one well,
I believe so.
through, there's limestone. You can't, limestone, you can't infuse water into limestone and just create the big sinkholes. So the technique is to drill a well through the limestone, straight down to the aquifer, and take the water through the aquifer, which means you have to filter it before you do that, because you don't want it, well, that water may not be as pure as some of the other water, but in any event, that'll be the technique. And we're working with Delbrook Apartments.
Correct.
Delbrook Apartments for a piece of ground where we can have the well plus a filtering area. And if it works, and if we can get the grant, which is knock on wood, we're asking for some help on this because it's an expensive proposition. We would be able to take a lot of the water that right now is inundating Delbrook area and get rid of it.
So if the project works as we hope, the vast majority of the water that runs through the channel that goes to the center of Delbrook would not be flowing through this. It would actually be injected directly into the aquifer. So hopefully we can address a lot of the stormwater issues and flooded basements hopefully in the area.
And
If
this
we don't
technique,
get the grant,
well, then we jump off a different bridge.
So, I apologize. But that project has been identified in the pollutant reduction plan. So the Board of Commissioners and the Hampton Township Sewer Authority have made a commitment to that project. So if that project is one of a project that will happen, hopefully.
I mean, where you live on the high ground, that the people come across the street to us. So, I know, I can remember as a kid, the street being flooded, and everybody the neighbor kids coming to us, because we lived on the high ground. And I know Mel Finkelstein lives across the street from us, they all have their basements flooded and stuff like that.
Exactly. And so this hopefully is a way to address it. And if it works, and we think it does, because we've had the test program, which we're working with DEP. In fact, we had a grant to try this out. And we were sort of what was like a model.
A pilot study.
Pilot study to see if it works, and it's been working, correct?
It's been working excellent.
Excellently. So if it works, it's expensive, but we may be able to do this in other parts of that southern part of the township, which is very, very, very difficult to drain. So this is our next target, is the Delbrook area.
And it would help trim the road too.
Absolutely. We may even be able to talk, and I was gonna bring it up later, but I'll bring it up later about the Navy, because okay, in the event, thank you very much.
I have a question about it. Where is your proposed well site that you're thinking of? Is it by the power station?
It would be to the east of the power station.
To the east?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Well, to the
because I remember there was those ponds
south,
that were down.
yeah, southeast. So the idea would be bioswales. There's two pipes that cross 581 that brings stormwater from the Clearview development, which is north of 581,
Right.
across underneath 581 and down to the Delbrook. We construct a bioswale to a bioretention pond with underdrains that would ultimately discharge into hopefully the injection well. I envision that being, the design is not complete, but I envision that well being southeast of the power structure there.
Have you got a proposed diameter of that well?
I do not. So again, the design is not complete, but for reference, I believe we've got an 8-inch diameter well that's in the Hampton Park.
Okay.
Excuse me, the nice lady over here